1,
2,
3,
4, 5, 6,
7, 8, 9, 10,
11.
12.
All right, good job. Yeah. So, yeah, what's that? That was hard. So let's start off with a turn and talk. So we've got the different phases of tragedy. This is really designed to help you write the paper for this. Why don't we start off by turning and talking? We've got 2 here. We'll do 3 there with Skylar, Brennan, and Kunder. Maybe 3 here with Britta, Maeve, and Ruby. And then if Luke and Mary can talk. Just start off with just talking about some of the greatness quotations you might have, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Okay. Oh my God, Ruby. I just like clever and I was like, you can like get up worse.
I sit on the council of 500, each tribe selected 50 councilors
Yeah.
and
But
came together to
I
form
was like, my first one was
to form a council of 500. They sit on this council.
There's a way you
It
can
was
look at
the
that.
example of the writers.
Because it allowed more people to get their opinions on this one.
Yeah, I don't provoke factions.
blind
It's cool. It's really original. I hope you can share that.
I had this skill conduct of the general note Tides was talked about everywhere. This was after I forget.
During the war,
I thought it was kind of couldn't controversial when, so
but we Athenians left our houses and our walls vacant and unfit to become no time to make a peace. But if we fight, yeah, civilians ago,
How could it happen like that?
I think that's
Just
all
a little bit of defenders,
like
fixers over a mighty one.
Like I thought that was kind of. He was the one that was
but at the time,
right? Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
They believe justice is what is honorable for
exactly.
For example, you asked me, that's how it's I agree.
I just grabbed it. Totally blank. Grab that text. I have it in my. Yeah.
Brought us here today, fighting peace really other not for money.
How do you, what do you think that shows greatness?
Well, I mean, it shows that Athens, so it's kind of just
Oh, so like Athens.
If you could just wrap up your conversations here in the next 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah,
that'd be
that's
great.
what I think. I included that one too, like, or wait, something like that. I said, this is my second one. Crazy as Thomas was, he was older guy bringing the men to Athens.
Okay, so let's bring this all back together. Just a couple reminders before we get started, right? We're looking to go to the textbook. And make sure you just give people a second to find the page you're referencing. And that we're looking to ask questions, both probing questions and then questions to the table that we might want to consider. And we're obviously building off of each other, not speaking over each other, using those positive soft skills like body language, like we have been all year. So, is there anybody who'd like to start us off with a quotation they have about Athens' greatness? Or an idea?
Well, when me, Skylar, and Kunder were talking, Skylar said a quote, and I have a quote that are like, kind of, if you just read it out loud, you don't pretty much thought it brings it, like, makes it seem like it's great, and it is. It's on page 27.
Okay. Give us a second here.
says, it was easy for the Athenians to form a permanent defensive alliance with the cities of their Greek brothers in Asia and Aegean islands. So, I think it could be a controversial quote to their greatness because in the beginning it started out to prevent Persia from coming back and attacking Greece, and then obviously as we figure out later, they use it to gain power, but
So, Brennan, what I hear you saying is that it could be greatness, but it also could be a flaw in Athens' view of things.
yes.
Yeah, and I also think that the way Brennan was describing this quote about how at first it started out great and then it could drop down to something that's a flaw, it shows the pattern of Athens. It's always going up and down until they finally collapsed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, it says permanent defensive alliance, so its original purpose was to defend against tyrannical empires, but in the end it turned into an offensive empire that went out and became the tyrannical empire.
So, the Delian, we can say, was made in good faith, but over time, it became worse and worse as a result of that. It could have been good, but it wasn't.
Are there other examples of greatness that you can see? So we've talked about the Delian League.
A quote I had that was on page 9. Says, it was an incredible contest and an incredible victory. How could it happen like that? The little band of defenders, victors over a mighty arrangement. So it's kind of just, it's just talking about how the small amount of Athenians were able to take this massive victory over tons of Persians, which is just pretty incredible for them. I think this was a big point in their greatness, is that they were able to defeat a world power at that time.
So they're referencing Marathon here, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And this brings us all the way back to the beginning of what, later on in the book we see, I don't know what the direct quote is, I know it's on here somewhere, but it talks about how Athens became what they had once defeated, and this is really the beginning of that, them defeating what they hated, and to see them become what they had fought so strongly against is kind of sad, and it all comes around.
Does anybody else want to comment about Marathon? And its connection to Athens' greatness? Does anybody have another example of greatness they want to share?
On page 29, oh, not 29, 28 and 29. I guess the quote I had is on 29, but it's about the reforms of Draco.
Okay.
It says, top of 29, last part of the first paragraph, says, for example, he wrote down all the laws of Athens. He specified that for each crime there would be a specific punishment, and he ensured that all Athenians were to be told the laws and penalties. In addition, nobles and non-nobles were to pay the same penalty for breaking the law. I thought that this was the first step to the Athenian democracy, and if this didn't happen, I believe that there would be a good chance that the democracy wouldn't have came to be as it did. And I'm wondering what other people think about that. I can rephrase the question if you
No,
want.
I think
I mean, the democracy is good and all, it allowed the greatness of Athens to happen, but ironically, in the same vein, it's the same system that allowed demagogues to come to power and cause the downfall of Athens. And all these positives and negatives, I think, kind of ties back to the beginning of the year where we discussed like the monarchy versus democracy thing.
So what I hear you saying is that the democracy also caused the downfall of Athens?
I mean, it's the system that allowed demagogues to take power because they influence the people's opinion, and the people's opinion is what ultimately mattered in the end.
I have a question for the everyone. I was wondering if you thought that if monarchs stayed in power and they ended up building a permanent defensive alliance, that this would have caused the Delian League to turn into the Athenian Empire faster or at all.
Can you repeat your question one more time?
Yeah. Do you guys think that if the government hadn't changed and that monarchs stayed in power, that Athens would have had a faster downfall or a downfall at all?
I think that's an interesting point, Brennan, because like you can really like see that difference in the Battle of Marathon. Is like I think if they were monarch or ruled by a monarch, they wouldn't have had that same passion for fighting. Like it talks about their passion that they were defending what they thought was right and that their choice to vote and things like that. And that's what made them fight so strongly and win that battle. And I don't think it would have been the same if they had a monarch. And they talked about like the Persians, they had a monarch and they were slaves going into battle and they didn't want to fight and they lost because of that.
Building off of what you're saying, at the Battle of Syracuse, like the Athenians sort of didn't have as much passion as the Syracusans and Spartans did because like their role had switched and they weren't fighting really for honor or democracy anymore. They were fighting for like enslavement, which is obviously not something that might be as easy to get behind and something to fight for.
Luke, I know when we were writing down some examples, you had a really good example. I'm wondering if you wanted to share it.
Sure. One example I had was when Cleisthenes wanted, he made the council 500, so he made 50 tribes. They each put out 50 counselors, and they all came together and they made the council of 500, which replaced Solon's council of 400.
What page is this on?
31. And it's the second to last one. It says each tribe selected 50 counselors, and together all these formed the council of 500, which replaced Solon's council of 400.
So this could be to anybody, but what do you think is great about that? I agree that it's great. What do you think is great about this?
Actually, I had a question for Luke, if we thought it would be ethical, if it was ethical for them to do or not.
I could say yes and no. Like, yes, it gave more opinions and more people got to have an opinion, but it also, like what Jocko was saying, it allowed demagogues to rise, and that probably wasn't the best idea for them to go and do.
I'm going to throw out my question again too, though. Do you think this is, what made this great? I think it's great, but what made this a great action for Cleisthenes to make this reform?
I believe this is a great action because it like split up the amount of power, because some groups had way more power than others originally. So when he split them up into different groups, he kind of separated the power so it's more even, so it would be a democracy and not one group of people would have more power. But I was interested to hear what Britta may think about this.
Well, reading further down on the same page, it's saying that in order to like prevent another tyrant, so like Rome was saying, splitting up the power and allowing for like a better democracy because everyone's ideas are mixing together and they're, I guess that's it.
Yeah, so people are mixing in their ideas, are mixing together. Thanks.
The more people who are able to tell or share their opinions, the more democratic the system.
One of the Athenian principles of democracy.
Yes.
Nice.
What makes alternative opinions so important to democracy, though? How has it helped the greatness of Athens become a thing?
Could you say your question again?
Okay. Why are alternative opinions important to democracy, and how has that helped Athens become a greater state?
I think alternative opinions are important to democracy because is it really a democracy if there's not a bunch of different opinions? I mean, the point of democracy is for everyone to have a say, and if there's not more than one say, then it's what, a monarchy?
If everyone
Anarchy.
in a democracy agreed on one thing, I don't think that makes it not a democracy. I think that's just people agreeing on a thing.
Yeah, but the point of having different views in a democracy is so that everyone can kind of understand how everybody is perceiving things and how to go forward that will benefit everyone to the best of their ability.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on this question? Why are alternative opinions important to a democracy?
Yeah, I was thinking that, well, for one, if people only have one option to choose from for their opinion, then I wouldn't say that's a democracy because they don't get a say in anything. And yeah.
I mean, that's not exactly what I was going for. If everyone wanted that one option, is it still a democracy?
Every single person
Because,
agrees.
I mean,
It's just a
hypothetically,
theory.
yeah, but no one, that's never even happened. Like, yeah, that's impossible.
Let me jump in here first. This is an interesting question, actually. I want to jump in here just because there's some juicy stuff that we can still discuss. Okay, I think you've done a nice job of mentioning some of Athens' greatness. What would you point to as a flaw, a tragic flaw?
I have a quote. It's on page 27. And it's the transformation of such a region into an empire made up of states under the control of Athens could be foreseen as an easy step. And I just thought that like this was a major flaw early on because instead of calling it a league where everyone had a choice, they decided to call it an empire. And they said that it could be foreseen as an easy step, so like an easy step to them having more control. Because that's how I at least saw it. And it also said under the control of Athens, so I thought that was an interesting thing that they were the only one controlling it and none of the other city-states had a say.
Yeah, I think when they say easy step, like, is it, yes, it's the easy step, but is it the right step?
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else want to comment on that? This is from the textbook author, William Altman. His commentary. Does anybody else want to share a flaw?
Yeah, I have a quote on page 21. It's kind of in the middle. It says, "The trophy of Miltiades will not let me sleep," and he said this because he was so eager for fame that the fame of Miltiades bothered him. I think this kind of can apply to Athens in the same way that it does, like Themistocles. Like, they were too eager for power and too ambitious, and that kind of ended them.
I agree with Maeve. I think I have another quote. It's on page 27, and I think it can relate to both Athens and Themistocles. No plan could be more advantageous or more dishonorable, and it's when Aristides is speaking to the people of Themistocles' idea of burning the rest of the Greek ships. So I think that Athens looks, especially later on, looks for opportunities that are more advantageous to them, and I also think like the burning of all other Greek ships is a very easy way to gain power over other states.
What prevented them from doing this?
I think the people wanting to be more honorable. So I think that the Athenian value was stopped on this.
Remember, this is where they had Aristides. Themistocles had to share the plan with Aristides, and Aristides had to give his approval. Aristides is the one who's like, no plan could be more advantageous and more dishonorable. So he's really checking them, but it's really the people who have entrusted him.
So, Brennan, connected to that, do you think that changing Athenian leaders started to change the people's values, and that was a flaw in Athens?
Yes, I do. I think that the fight for power between many different leaders and them convincing the people kind of what they wanted changed their values. And I also think the situation of Athens changed it, so how they had to keep many of these smaller states and I guess pieces of land under their control changed people's Athens.
Do you think there's anything wrong with a leader inherently, do you think there's anything inherently wrong with a leader trying to change the values of a people? Is that any different from one person convincing another person to do something?
I think that it depends what they're trying to do, because you can see that Themistocles just blatantly lies to the people about a situation, but Themistocles was looking out for the city, and I think someone like Cleon or Alcibiades will lie to the city to benefit himself or themselves.
So what you're saying is depends on their private agenda, like Themistocles' private agenda was for the city, but like Cleon and Alcibiades was for self-interest.
Yeah, I think this also has to do with a quote on page 75, where I'm not sure where it is, but it says, it claims that like the people are slaves to their ears because they listen to their leaders' lies and believe them.
It's right in the
Oh, it
middle of the
says,
page.
yeah.
So that's,
This is Cleon speaking, yep.
Are you saying that instead of just one person, that Athens is the hero?
Well, this is I think I'm talking about like their flaws.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
So saying hero has a tragic flaw.
Yeah,
So are you saying that Athens
just the
is
people of
hero?
Athens.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, in the story of Athens, there's a lot of different people that can be looked at as the hero. Don't necessarily
Yeah.
separate them.
But that's an interesting point, this idea that you're talking about the people. So what is this saying about the people?
That they're beginning to have flaws and nobody's pointing them out.
I think that connects to it. I'm not sure where it is, but it's like on page 129. It's sort of at the end of the second paragraph. It says, "Remember that folly in citizens causes disasters in cities." So we start to see this flaw that they are slaves to their ears. And then folly in citizens causes disasters in cities.
And that's referring to like Alcibiades, right? This is when Alcibiades is coming to power.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, how much of it is the individual's fault and how much is it the people's fault? Because in the end, is it the people's job to check the leaders, or is it sort of like the leader's job to always be right and make the honorable decision?
Let's consider that question. That's a good, really great question. Can you say that one more time?
Is it the people's job to check the leaders, or is it the leaders as individuals' job to always make the right and honorable decision?
I think leaders can often believe that they're making the honorable decision, but in reality, that's like not everyone agrees. Like Jocko's point, but the opposite, like earlier.
Does anyone have an example from the text to back up this point?
Yeah, I have a quote, and I put it in the section that the heroes repeatedly learn, but I think it could be used as a flaw. On page 77, I think it's in
This is with the speech of Diodotus?
Yeah.
The middle.
Yes, so it says, if one of us advises you to do something that later turns out badly, you don't hold yourselves guilty, but rather the person who recommended the action is guilty. So I think that's a specific example that supports Mary.
Can you explain the connection a little bit?
Yeah, I think that, well, Mary is saying that, I guess the people aren't, or someone was saying the people aren't really blamed for whatever has happened, and so I think that when Diodotus says this, he's kind of calling out the Athenian democracy and the people themselves, saying that if they ask a leader to make a decision whether it's honorable or not, if it later turns out hurting Athens, then they won't blame themselves, they'll blame the leader who made the decision.